Right, hello. Hello, my name's Waldowski, and let's get into a part of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the Discovery Tour. Where I wonder what we'll be doing. Apparently there's 30 tours, so we'll see how that goes. If it's like an hour for each tour, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how long the tours last. So we did every... Okay, so if we click continue, we're at sea, normal 208 hours. Which is our main save. Anyway, story module options. Is there anything in the options? HDR, gameplay, HUD, sound, language. I just wonder if there's anything in the... Yeah, should we start the discovery tour then? Let's see what happens. The Athenian Golden Age. Democracy, tragedy, comedy, medicine, history, and classical art and architecture all emerged in 5th century BCE Athens, where philosophy also rose in status. I wonder what we'll be doing. The Cripeteer provided survivalist training that acclimated soldiers to harsh conditions and covert operations. The training bred courage and the capacity to bear pain. Cripetea. No napkins. Ancient bits of bread, which are then...
Here, visitor. You are about to embark on a journey of discovery through the rich and fascinating history of classical Greece. You'll become fully immersed in the painstakingly detailed world built for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which you are free to explore at your own pace, without any danger or time pressure. For a directed experience, take one of the many guided tours curated by prominent historians and archaeologists. Along the way, exchange words with some of Greece's most famous historical persons. The classical Greece you are about to explore is at the peak of its glory. This period is synonymous with grand accomplishments of the physical and the mental. Architectural marvels which still stand today dot its landscape, while towering achievements in philosophy, political systems, and art still influence our modern society in profound ways. We hope you become engrossed in the dazzling riches of ancient Greece and welcome you to your visit.
Use L to move a character to the start of the tour. 11 tours, 76 discovery sites. World map. The world map tracks your progress throughout each region of ancient Greece. Use the filters to help show you tours or discovery sites you are looking for. Press X to place a marker on the map. Huh. Oh, I see. One tours. A discovery site. How'd you find a discovery site? What's a discovery site then? Oh right, you can just go straight to the tour. That's interesting. Characters. Cassandra Pirate. What was that? Alexios Hunter. Timeline. Huh. Explore the great, glorious Acropolis of Athens and experience the sacred landmarks within.
Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the Acropolis, the shining jewel of Athens. My name is Aspasia. Though I am not originally from Athens, I have climbed to the top of its social ladder using my wit and intellect. I've even earned the love of Pericles, one of the most powerful men in the city. The mind truly is a beautiful thing. Personally, I think the Acropolis is one of, if not the, greatest place in all of Greece. Though, considering it was the project of my partner, Pericles, I may be a touch biased. The Acropolis of Athens is a bastion of art and culture worthy of the gods themselves. Within this citadel, you will find many important sacred buildings, as well as some of the most magnificent art in all of Greece. You are in for a very enlightening visit. When you're done, come find me, and we can discuss the things you have seen. Farewell for now.
Follow the path. Tour started the Acropolis site. No, the Acropolis of Athens.
The Acropolis has gone through many changes in its long history. It began as a simple rock, was settled as early as the Neolithic period, and then became
Oops.
a fortress in the Mycenaean period. Stone buildings started appearing in the 7th century BCE. But the famous structures whose ruins remain visible today date mainly from a period of construction in the 5th century BCE. The location...
Is she reading out? Oh.
The Acropolis has gone through many changes in its long history. It began as a simple rock, was settled as early as the Neolithic period, and then became a fortress in the Mycenaean period. Stone buildings started appearing in the 7th century BCE, but the famous structures whose ruins remain visible...
After the archaic buildings of the old Acropolis, most notably the Temple of Athena Pallas, were burned down in should I read this? Statement period. Should I read these, really? After the archaic buildings of the Acropolis, most notably the Temple of Athena Pallas, were burned down in 480 BCE by Xerxes' Persian army, the great general and statesman Pericles resolved to transform the naturally imposing rock into a huge monument to Athens' political, military, and cultural greatness. Thus began the most ambitious building program the Greek world had ever seen at the time. Several million drachmae were spent on the whole project, which has been deemed by UNESCO as the supreme expression of the adaptation of architecture and natural site. The Parthenon alone costs 469 talents, nearly 3 million drachmae, and the equivalent of approximately 12 tons of silver. To justify the massive cost, Pericles cited the need to immortalize Athens' greatness, but also called attention to the jobs the project would create for hundreds of stonecutters, carpenters, metalworkers, painters, and unskilled laborers. All of them were grateful for the opportunity to make more money.
The Acropolis is closely tied with Athens' foundation myth. Supposedly, it was the site where Athena and Poseidon competed for the city's patronage. This connection gave the Acropolis a sacred aura, and it was considered the religious heart of the city. The Temple of Athena Nike was built on the remains of old fortifications from the Mycenaean era. Worship at the temple can be traced back to the 6th century BCE, but the building itself was destroyed during the Greco-Persian Wars a century later. It was rebuilt during the Peloponnesian War. Given that the name Athena Nike roughly means Athena of Victory, it was likely constructed in the hopes that Athens would win the war. Unusually, the temple depicts historical scenes of battles against the Persians instead of the more mythologically inclined art of other Greek buildings. The temple's priestess was chosen randomly among the Athenians and received a salary of 50 drachmae annually, along with skins and trophies from sacrificed animals.
The area where the Temple of Athena Nike was built offers a beautiful view of the southern shores of Attica, along with the ports of Piraeus and Phaleron. This noteworthy feature, as well as the Mycenaean ruins nearby, were the basis for the assumption that Aegeus, the ninth king of the Athenian dynasty, watched the sea from here in the hopes of seeing his son Theseus returning safe and sound from Crete. Theseus, the most important Athenian mythological hero, had left for Crete under the guise of one of the youths sent to feed the Minotaur. Theseus promised Aegeus that he would kill the monster and bring back the Athenian youth on a ship flying white sails, symbolizing victory and joy. The hero slew the Minotaur and sailed home, but forgot to replace his ship's dark morning sails with lighter ones. When Aegeus saw the dark sails, he assumed Theseus had died. Stricken with grief, the king threw himself off the steep bastion of the Acropolis, meeting his death on the ground below. However, other versions of the myth tell that Aegeus flung himself into the sea, which consequently took his name, the Aegean. Wingless victories from the Athenian parapet. Okay, that's the thing. Oh, where does the tour go? Back this. Oh. There are discovery sites all over the world. Interact with them to learn more on ancient Greece. Many are hidden throughout the world. Find them to unlock special characters. We might not get all these. Horopalea. Oh. The Horopalea was the monumental gateway to the western side of the Acropolis. It was built between 437 and 432 BCE under the supervision of either Phidias or Menesicles, and was part of Pericles' plan to adorn the Acropolis with magnificent monuments. Although it was not seen as a military structure, the Horopalea were used to restrict access to Athens' holiest area. It was conceived as a spectacular construction of Pentelic white marble and Eleusinian grey marble, and its design was meant stylistically mirror the Parthenon. The Parapalea's construction was suspended in 431 BCE due to the start of the Peloponnesian War and was never resumed. This means that out of a very ambitious project, only the main building was finished. Nevertheless, with its 5 gates and a ceiling painted with golden stars, it remained impressive. The gateway was also unique in that it mixed both Doric and Ionic columns, in addition to being reinforced with iron. The northern wing of the western facade housed a 10.75 m meters by 9 meters ritual dining room known as the Pinacotheke. According to Pausanias, the Pinacotheke was famous in antiquity for its paintings of Greek battles. New reward unlocked.
The Acropolis was built up over a long period, due in no small part to its partial destruction during the Greco-Persian Wars. It was in the 5th century BCE, though, that the Acropolis received its most significant improvements. This period was an extremely prosperous time for Athens, both financially and culturally. With a booming economy bolstered by trade and the Lavrion silver mines, Pericles, the leader of Athens, financed a huge project to rebuild the citadel. He enlisted the help of renowned artists, like the sculptor Phidias, as well as the architects Iktinos and Callicrates. Together, they erected buildings like the Parthenon and the Propylaea Gateway. Pericles' goal was to make the Acropolis into a glorious monument to the gods and to mortal Athenians.
History of the Acropolis did not end with the Periclean building program. In antiquity, fires and invasions often imperiled or even destroyed parts of the Acropolis, forcing Athenians and foreign admirers of the site to restore, embellish, and protect the remnants of Pericles' achievements. For example, a ceremonial entrance in front of the Propylaea was built by F. Septimius Marcellinus, ca. 280 CE, with stone quarried from nearby monuments which had recently been destroyed by a Germanic invasion. It is known as Boulay Gate, named after its first modern excavator. The Acropolis had many uses throughout history. Under Byzantine rule, it hosted pilgrims seeking to visit the Parthenon, which had been transformed into a church after the Fourth Crusade. It housed a Roman Catholic cathedral, as well as the palace for the Latin Duke of Athens. In Ottoman times, it acted as a fortress for protecting mosques, living quarters, and the harem of the local governor. It was only in the first half of the 19th century CE that the newly independent modern Greek state decided to revive the Acropolis's classical ruins. The medieval and modern buildings were removed, and the site's restoration has been going on ever since. Find discovery sites for new insights on the world, or even when you're not in a tour. Should we get them? See, there's 76. I ain't gonna find them all. Holy shit. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm gonna focus on the tours, I think. Maybe one day we'll come back and do the discovery sites. There's lots of them, aren't there? Why is that blue? Should we come back if I'm feeling in the mood one day and do those?
Behind the Propylaea was the giant bronze statue of Athena Promachos, or Athena who fights on the front lines. That name was reflected in the spear and shield the statue held in its hands. It was erected in the mid-5th century BCE by the artist Phidias. According to an inscription, it took 9 years to make and cost almost 500,000 drachmae. At approximately 10 meters tall, the statue was apparently so large that Pausanias claimed its helmet and spear tip could be seen from the sea near Cape Sunion, 60 kilometers away. The ornamentation on the statue's shield was engraved by the metalsmith Mies.
Meese. Isn't that the plural for moose? Mooses. Meese. That's a silly joke. Wait, should we... Oh my god. Discovery sites. Maybe we should do them. How do you know... it's not going to come up with where you've done them though. Cool Eagle. Hang on. First person view. You see, how am I going to know when I've done them though? Learn more. Athena, who was miraculously born from Zeus's head, was one of the most important deities in the Greek pantheon. In the Bronze Age, she was an Aegean goddess who protected lucrative palatial and household activities such as wool processing. Later on, she became the patron deity of the many ancient Greek cities, with Athens being only the best known among them. However, she still kept her place as the protector of artisans, spinners, weavers, smiths, and the like. The goddess had numerous epithets reflecting specific attributes, including Athena Polias, the protector of the city, Athena Ergane, the protector of the crafts, and Athena Pormachos, fighting in the first rank, which alluded to her worship as a martial deity. She was also conceived as the goddess of wisdom, and her most famous symbol was the owl, which was often engraved on Athenian coins and painted on vases.
The Araphoroi were young girls between the ages of 7 and 11 who were in charge of special rites. A list of 4 girls was drafted by the Assembly of Citizens, from which the High Magistrate, the Archon Basileus, chose 2 to serve as Araphoroi for the year. The girls lived in a house on the Acropolis. They were in charge of carrying sacred objects and weaving the peplos of Athena. The peplos was a sacred robe offered to Athena during Panathenaea, a festival held in her honor.
The Araphoroi were selected on the basis of noble birth, so only high-status girls had the privilege of serving Athena during the feasts of the Araphora in the Panathenaea. Pausanias wrote that the 2 girls, whose designation meant bearers of mysteries, sacred offerings, performed a special rite during the Arahephoria. Their main duty was to descend from the Acropolis to a precinct of Aphrodite, carrying secret objects on their heads given to them by the priestess of Athena. Once their destination Once at their destination, they left the objects and received something else in return. Neither the Araphori nor the priestesses knew what any of the objects were, as they were always covered. The Araphori's other duty was to assist the temple's priestess in the sacred act of weaving Athena's peplos garment. This ritual took place over 9 months before the garment was finally offered to Athena at the Pantheia. Employing young inexperienced Araphora guaranteed the purity of the sacred robe. It also gave the girls a chance to learn how to spin and weave, which were the two most important tasks required of Greek women. Tour. We're going on a tour.
The Erechtheion was an atypical temple. It was dedicated not only to Athena Polias, but also to Kekrops, the mythical founder of Athens, his son Erechtheos, and even Poseidon, the sea god who challenged Athena for possession of the city. The temple was divided into sections. The eastern part housed a statue dedicated to Athena, while the western section jointly belonged to Poseidon and Erechtheos. Meanwhile, King Kekrop's grave was believed to be under the caryatid porch. Under the temple was a crypt that was said to contain the sacred snakes of Athena. The snakes may have had a sweet tooth, because the priestesses of Athena allegedly fed them honey cakes.
Honey cakes? Erechtheion's north court was a cloistered area where Athenians probably performed two specific religious rituals related to the festivals of the Plinteria and Calenteria. On Pilanteria, the olive wood statue of Athena Polias was brought out of the temple, undressed, washed, and cleaned by two maidens, who also washed its garments. Then on Calenteria, the statue was redressed, redecked, and returned to its holy place. These two feasts, which had numerous funerary connotations, are always connected in the accounts of ancient writers. Athenians believed they were unlucky days because the goddess was otherwise occupied, and they accordingly avoided undertaking important activities until the statue was back in the temple. You see, how are you going to know? You got to go through, haven't you? What I'd need to do is get a list of all the places, discovery sites. Aros hasn't got anything. Cause should we leave it as something we might do later on? Dues to drop. Should know how to climb by now.
The Parthenon is one of the most well-known buildings in the world, and an enduring symbol of ancient Greek civilization. While it is located on the Acropolis, the building is not a traditional temple. It was built by the sculptor Phidias and the architects Callicrates and Ictinus as a great monument to the glory of the city of Athens. That glory is evident in its many carvings. One of the most carved monuments in Greek architecture, the Parthenon's decorations depict several mythological scenes. These include the birth of Athena, her fight against Poseidon for the patronage of Athens, the gods' battle with the giants, and the procession of the great Panathenea.
Oh, learn more. Parthenon was built and decorated between 447 and 432 BCE, and the worship of Athena went on for nearly 1 millennium. Although the building was affected by the destruction caused by Germanic invaders in the 3rd century CE, In approximately 590 CE, it was turned into a Christian Greek church dedicated to Mira Parthenos, the Virgin Mary, and the new protector of Athens. The church became the fourth most important pilgrimage destination in the Byzantine Empire after Constantinople, Ephesus, and Thessalonica. After the Latin soldiers of the Fourth Crusade captured Constantinople in 1204 CE, Athens became a Crusader duchy for 2.5 centuries, and the Orthodox Church became the Catholic Cathedral of Our Lady. The Ottoman conquest of 1458 CE transformed the Parthenon once again. This time it became an Islamic mosque. Although refurbishments and additions were made to the building throughout its many iterations, the continued Christian and Muslim activity within the Parthenon helped preserve the monument after no better than many other ancient structures. Unfortunately, in 1687 CE, during the Venetian siege of the Ottoman fortress on the Acropolis, a cannonball shot struck the Parthenon, which was being used to store gunpowder. The roof was blown apart, 3 walls were severely damaged, and several columns and metopes fell to the ground, as well as most of the sculptures on the pediments and the frieze.
The Parthenon's inner chamber, or cella, contained a massive statue of Athena that was considered to be one of the sculptor Phidias's greatest masterpieces. The statue was chryselephantine, a combination of gold and ivory. To justify the steep cost of its construction, Pericles told Athenians that the statue was a gold reserve, which could be disassembled in times of economic distress. The cella also allegedly contained a pool, whose main purpose was to control the room's humidity, which helped preserve the statue's ivory.
Oh, I forget to learn more. Some researchers have hypothesized that the Parthenon statue of Athena cost almost as much as the building itself. Unfortunately, the statue was either destroyed by a fire or brought to Constantinople in late Roman times, where all trace of it was lost. Fortunately, descriptions from historians like Plutarch and Pausanias are, as well as smaller copies like the marble Varvakeion statuette, allow for a detailed reconstruction. The goddess was armed with a triple-crested helmet featuring a sphinx and 2 griffins, a big circular shield in her left hand, and a spear. She held a winged Nike 2 meters tall in her right hand, while a huge sacred snake was coiled between her left foot and the shield. She wore a typical peplos robe tucked into a belt, and on her chest was a snake-ridged aegis displaying the head of Medusa. Today, a modern replica of the statue stands in a copy of the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. Running around robbing banks. Oh wow, that's interesting, isn't it? First person.
Athens' treasury was located in the Parthenon, where it was believed to be protected by Athena herself. The treasury contained objects of great value, acquired from different conquests, as well as a mass of minted silver coins and various offerings to Athena. Pericles also decided to move the entirety of the Delian League's treasure to the Parthenon in 454 BCE. This was a great testament to Athens' power over the rest of Greece. The riches were divided into 2 parts, the Demosia, which belonged to the city, and the Hiera Cremata, which was dedicated to the goddess and only used for religious purposes.
At the height of its power, Athens' two main sources of revenue were the silver mines of Lauron and the contributions paid by the allied cities of the Delian League. The Delian League began in 478 BCE as an alliance of around 150 Hellenic cities, all headed by Athens. Its aim was to free the Greek cities under Persian oppression. The allies, whose numbers eventually grew to 300 as a hang on. Eventually grew to 300 as a consequence of numerous victories, contributed troops and money, the latter of which was stored in the sanctuary of Apollo at Delos, a small holy island in the Aegean. After the Persians were defeated, the allies started to resent Athens and its constant demand for troops and money. Athens ruthlessly quarreled every revolt and transferred the allied treasury to the Acropolis, gradually transforming the League into its own empire. In fact, part of Sparta's success during the Peloponnesian War was determined by their promise to give the Athenian allies their freedom back, which earned the city lots of support. Return to the tour guide. I think there's a quiz. I ain't gonna get the quiz right.
And what did you think of the Acropolis? It truly is quite something, isn't it? A sacred sanctuary and an architectural marvel, all in one. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Tour quiz. At the end of each tour, you have the option to take a short, light-hearted quiz. Right or wrong, your host will tell you more about each answer you give. Tours for which you have completed the quiz will have a quiz complete state. I'm ready for a quiz.
You're confident enough for a test? Very well. Let us see how much you know.
Uh-oh.
Which two gods competed for Athens' patronage?
Oh, fucking I don't know. Athena and Ares?
Not quite.
Oh.
Although Athena and Ares did fight each other in the Trojan War, with Athena siding with the Greeks and her brother supporting Troy.
What was the
Which
question?
two gods competed for Athens' patronage?
Oh, I don't know.
Correct. It was Poseidon and Athena who fought for Athens' patronage. As for who won, the answer is in the city's name. On to the next question. Who sculpted the statue of Athena in the Parthenon? Correct. The renowned sculptor Phidias made the statue, which was considered one of his masterpieces. And now, the final question. Which king's tomb was believed to be under the Caryatid porch?
Don't know.
Perseus slew the Gorgon Medusa and founded Mykene, but he was not buried under the Caryatid porch. Keep trying.
Leonidas?
Leonidas was a Spartan king. He would not have been buried in Athens.
That's what I
Try
thought.
again.
Wow, that was like really wrong.
I'm afraid not.
Aw.
Menelaus was known for two things: marrying Helen of Troy and going to war when she left him for the beautiful Paris. Try another answer.
There's only one left.
That is correct. Cecrops was the mythological first king of Athens, and his tomb was said to be under the Erechtheion. It seems you know much about this place. Well done, wanderer.
Oh wow, thanks.
Very well. On to the next tour.
Alright, you can just go straight to another tour. Explore the world. Press the options to see what other tours are available in the world. Complete tours and discovery sites to unlock new characters and mounts. Pythagoras. Quest complete. Do we leave the discovery sites to do? And we'll just do the tours, I think. Wander the remnants of Macenae, a place that was in ruins even in the time of antiquity.
Welcome, traveler, to the ruins of Mycenae. My name is Herodotus, and I am a traveler from Halicarnassus. I retrace the cause of various events, such as wars and great calamities. I describe what I see and record what I'm told, all with the aim of providing a better understanding of why these things occur. Look for me to introduce you to many sites. It is humbling to stand in the remnants of such a great civilization. Looking at these ruins, I am reminded that the past is never as far behind us as we think. These are the ruins of Mycenae, center of the old Mycenaean civilization. It was home to great warriors and heroes. In many ways, places like Athens and Sparta stand on the shoulders of its accomplishments. This tour will take you through its ruins and introduce you to its most important monuments, revealing its history in the process. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'll be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
Map. How do you know when you've done the quiz as well?
I will see you again soon, traveler. I will see you again soon, traveler.
The Mycenaean civilization flourished in the Late Bronze Age between 1600 and 1200 BCE. During this period, it was mainly located in the Peloponnese and central Greece. Mycenaeans were known for exploring distant lands. Notably, they battled the Hittite allied city of Walusa in a conflict that was believed to be the inspiration for Homer's Trojan War. But the Mycenaean people didn't only travel to fight. They learned much from their neighbors, the Minoans of Crete, such as how to write syllabic script on clay tablets. Such tablets provide evidence that Mycenaeans spoke an early form of Greek. They also tell of how great Mycenaean kings ruled over their warriors from opulent palaces in places like Mycenae, Thebes, and Knossos.
Knossos. Mycenaean warriors roamed the seas on the 20 to 50 oared galleys. Knowledge about their various ventures abroad can be traced back to many sources, such as cargo from Bronze Age shipwrecks and Egyptian pharaonic artifacts delivered in Mycenaean palaces. What is that?
The entrance to Agamemnon's Citadel, or the Lion Gate, is one of the most iconic monuments in Mycenae. It is impressive for both its height and for the intimidating rendering on its relief. which depicts two lions standing on either side of a column. Unfortunately, the lions' heads, which were presumably made of a precious metal or higher quality stone, have been lost to time. The gate was most likely meant to greet a triumphant king returning home from successful military campaigns and to awe foreign visitors.
The Lion Gate was described by the traveller Pausanias in the 2nd century CE. He stated that the two animals on the relief were lions, but it is unknown if their heads were still in place at the time. Numerous seals and carved gems from the 13th century BCE depicted similar images of lions, panthers, and griffins. There were also other gates guarded by lions in the eastern Mediterranean, such as the one in Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite Empire.
When these shafts were discovered by archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann in 1876, he believed the 6 gold-filled graves to be connected with the family of the great king Agamemnon, even going so far as to proclaim a gold mask he found within to be the death mask of Agamemnon. However, this was refuted by later excavations, which showed that the 19 bodies buried in the shafts dated back to a few hundred years before Agamemnon was even born. In fact, at the time of the body's burial, the Lion Gate and the citadel walls had not even been built yet. It's estimated that the people in the graves were members of the first Mycenaean dynasty. The graves later became a place of worship for Mycenaean kings, who raised walls to protect them. These walls helped preserve several incredible artifacts, including women's jewelry, death masks, and masterfully crafted weapons.
The artifacts found in the grave circles are noteworthy for their monetary value, but also because some of them feature detailed fighting and hunting scenes that help historians better understand the life of early Mycenaean elites. Shaft grave burials were eventually abandoned around 1500 BCE and replaced with the more prestigious tholos tombs. This is quite peaceful, isn't it?
By 1250 BCE, Mycenae was at the height of its power, and its living quarters and workshops were numerous. Houses were built everywhere, from the top of the palace's hill near the king's residence, to the slopes and terraces within the walls, to the nearby hills outside the citadel. At one point, the citadel's walls even had to be enlarged to make room for more quarters. The people who lived inside the citadel were those with high status in either the military, religious, or administrative sectors of the kingdom. This is reflected by the ceramic and metal vessels inside the houses, as well as their painted plastered walls.
Mycenaean houses rarely had windows and would have been rather dark and poorly ventilated. As a result, most household activities probably took place in the courtyard and the vestibule, while sacrifices and feasting occurred in the Megaron Hall. Some houses also had basements for storing food, tools, textiles, and other items. I think what I might do is get a list of the areas. We'll focus on doing the tours, and then if I'm ever in the mood to come back and do something, we'll go through the actual discovery sites. And what I might do is I might get a list of areas, write them down, and then cross them off so that we can see if we can get everything done.
A traveler seeking an audience with the king would have first ascended a steep ramp from the Lion Gate to the citadel's summit. Here, they would have walked into the palatial complex through a grand entrance called the Propylon. Once inside, their gaze would immediately be drawn to the palace's main hall, a monumental area known as the Megaron. The vividly decorated Megaron, which glittered with precious objects and colorful frescoes in its heyday, was where the king would have received the traveler. If the king was feeling generous, he would have shared with the visitor the palace's most marvelous feature, its commanding and majestic view, which stretched from the plain of Argolis to the gleaming Aegean Sea.
The Megaron Palace was an architectural wonder in its time, especially in regards to the preparation work that had to be done before its construction. The hill that the palace was built on was steep and rugged, so some of the buildings had to be placed on artificial terraces supported by walls. Unfortunately, these preparations did not save the palace from an earthquake around 1200 BCE. The quake destroyed much of the structure, including a part of the domos and prodomos. As a result, historians have had to draw comparisons with better preserved palaces around Greece to fully reconstruct the palace in Mycenae. Wait, hang on, what was the picture?
A traveler seek here, they would have walked into the palatial... if the king...
Megaron of Mycenae, 2006.
It was in this palace where a legendary Mycenaean king like Agamemnon would have held court. According to Homer and other poets, Agamemnon led the Greeks in the sack of Troy. Stories say that he was a fearsome warrior on par with Achilles, but also an overly ambitious and arrogant ruler. He sacrificed his own daughter, Iphigenia, to convince Artemis to grant his ship's passage to Troy. After conquering the city, he returned to Mycenae with mounds of riches, and a Trojan named Cassandra as his concubine. Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, was not pleased with her husband's sacrifice of their daughter. She plotted to murder her husband out of anger. The plot was successful, and, depending on the version of the story, Agamemnon was either murdered in his bath by Clytemnestra or killed by his cousin Aegisthus during a banquet.
While Agamemnon is one of the principal characters in the Iliad, his development from a harsh, stubborn leader to a wise and confident ruler is mostly overshadowed by the exploits of Achilles. Despite attempts to link buildings and artifacts from Mycenae with the legendary Agamemnon, there is no conclusive proof of a historical Mycenaean king who could have inspired the Homeric character. Nevertheless, there are some clues that such a ruler existed. Some Hittite letters mention a Greek king of Ahiryawa, as well as everlasting disputes over the town of Wilusa, which is believed by modern scholars to be the inspiration for Homer's Troy. Huh.
You've completed the tour. I trust it was an eye-opening experience. Though it did not last, Mycenae was a sort of precursor to what would eventually become the Greek civilization we know today. It's important we remember them, if only to avoid repeating their mistakes. Now, what else would you like to do? Then let's begin. First, I have quite a simple question. Which ancient city may have been the inspiration for Homer's depiction of Troy?
Mycenae?
No, the
Oh.
Mycenaeans who were at war with Troy in the first place. Yes, the Mycenaeans' conflict with the city of Wilusa allegedly inspired Homer's Trojan War. Now, for the second question. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to convince which god to allow him to proceed to Troy?
Huh? I don't know.
No, Agamemnon's sacrifice did not appeal to Apollo. Try again.
Got no idea.
Agamemnon did not sacrifice his daughter to Athena. In fact, Athena supported the war with Troy. So such a sacrifice would have been senseless. Keep trying. True, Ares was the god of war, but Agamemnon did not sacrifice his daughter to him. Try a different answer. Yes, Agamemnon sacrificed Iphigenia to reconcile with Artemis, who then allowed his ships to pass to Troy. Now, one last question. What was the name of Agamemnon's Trojan concubine?
Oh, is it clear? Oh, I don't know.
Correct.
Oh.
Following the sack of Troy, Agamemnon sailed home with the Trojan prophetess named Cassandra. You've studied the ruins well, traveler. I appreciate your desire for more knowledge. Let us continue.
The Pan-Hellenic sanctuary of Delphi was renowned for the oracle of Apollo and considered the center of the world in ancient Greece. Discover the Olympian splendor under the watchful eye of the gods.
Welcome, friend, to this especially sacred part of the Olympian sanctuary. My name is Barnabas, and I am a ship captain. Don't be fooled by my scarred eye. Though I've seen my share of combat, I mostly stick to trading these days. Well, trading and introducing visitors like you to wonderful sights like this. This place is practically vibrating with divine energy. I feel like if I look over my shoulder right now, Zeus will be staring back at me. This place, I feel like...
Wait.
This place, I feel like if I look over my shoulder right now, Zeus will be staring back at me. The sanctuary of Olympia was dedicated to Zeus, king of the gods. It had close connections to the divine, as you will see very soon. I'll come find you when you're done, and we can talk about what you've learned.
Where did Barnabas go?
This workshop was built for the renowned sculptor Phidias after his work on the Acropolis of Athens. In 435 BCE, Phidias came to Olympia to begin working on the great chryselephantine statue of Zeus. He died 5 years later, shortly after completing his masterpiece. This grand statue would become one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Phidias's workshop was located right next to the Temple of Zeus. Its structure has been well preserved, mostly owing to its conversion to a church in the 5th century CE. Archaeologists have also discovered lots of ancient materials in the surrounding area, such as casting molds and sculpting tools. The most famous artifact, however, is a cup bearing an inscription that aggressively states, "I belong to Phidias."
Phidias was part of Pericles' inner circle, however this did not prevent him from being accused of impiety and exiled from Athens. He was charged with stealing gold intended for the statue of Athena in the Parthenon, and for attempting to portray himself and Pericles on the shield of Athena. Many other friends of Pericles, such as Aspasia and Anaxagoras, were also persecuted around the same time. The Louvre.
fifth and final day of the Olympic Games, victors attended a ceremony where they were crowned with olive wreaths and showered in flowers. The crowns came from the sacred olive tree of Zeus, which was planted near the god's temple. A young boy trimmed the branches with a golden sickle before giving them to the Hellenodikai to turn into wreaths. After the crowning ceremony, it was time for great feasting and celebration.
The list of, oh god, this is long. The list of Olympic winners is known mainly from two sources, Pausanias and Eusebius. By cross-referencing these sources with other documents, we know that there were approximately 3,500 winners from 776 BCE to 277 CE. However, only about 800 of these people are officially known. Amongst the victors were several remarkable athletes such as Callias of Athens. Callias was not only won the Pancration event 472 BCE, but he was also the first Athenian to win at each of the 4 Panhellenic Games. Diagoras of Rhodes, meanwhile, won the boxing event in Olympia in 464 BCE, and his 2 sons and 2 grandsons were also Olympic victors. But perhaps the most famous athlete from antiquity was the boxer Theagenes of Thasos in Olympia. He won the boxing event in 480 BCE and the Pancration event from 476 BCE. He also won 10 times. Hang on, I'll read that again. And the Pancration event in 476 BCE. He also won 10 times at the Isthmian Games, 9 times at the Nemean Games, and 3 times at the Pythian Games, in addition to winning several other regional games. After his death, Theagenes was made a hero by his countrymen, who honored him with a cult. Can we blend in with this crowd? Blending in. Heroic cults. Ancient Greek heroes were viewed as intermediates between gods and men. Consequently, hero cults were a distinctive feature of Greek religion. Most heroes originated from heroic epics such as Pelops in Olympia, but this quality was not always necessary. For example, Erechtheus of Athens had a local hero cult without ties to an epic. On some occasions, extraordinary humans, such as the founders of cities, could also become the objects of a cult, like Brasidas in Amphipolis. Hero shrines, or heroons, were often constructed around the hero's real or suspected tombs. One exception among hero cults was the cult of Heracles. Heracles was considered as much as a god as hero, and his cult was widespread. There are many large sanctuaries dedicated to the demigod, such as the Herakleion in Thasos, where he was viewed as one of the city's protectors. Doo-doo. Pelopion. It was dedicated to Pelops, which inspired the name Peloponnese. His cult developed into the founding myth of the Olympic Games, and a black ram was sacrificed in his honor every year.
Pelops was both a legendary Greek hero and the mythical
Put my leg
founder
down.
of the Olympic Games. According to legend, Pelops fell in love with the beautiful Hippodamia. Her father, Oenomaus, the king of Pisa, disapproved of their union. Having once heard a prophecy that he would be killed by his son-in-law, Oenomaus was known to challenge his daughter's suitors to chariot races, killing them when he won. Still, Pelops was determined to win Hippodamia's heart. Before the race, he enlisted the help of Poseidon, who gave him a golden chariot with 4 winged horses. Pelops was able to win both the race and the hand of his beloved, while Oenomaus was dragged to death by his horses. The start of this famous race was depicted on the eastern pediment of the Temple of Zeus.
In Greek mythology, Pelops' father was Tantalos, the king of Siphalos in Lydia. The gods favored Tantalos and often invited him to their feasts. At one such feast, Tantalos tried serving his son Pelops to the gods as a way of testing them. He cut Pelops into pieces and made his flesh into a stew. Only Demeter, distracted by the loss of her daughter Persephone, ate Pelops' shoulder. The other gods sensed the king's treachery and did not partake in the stew. Zeus punished Tantalos by sending him to Tartarus, where he could not quench his thirst or sate his hunger. Any water or fruit he reached for shrank continuously away from his grasp, serving as the origin for the word tantalize. With Tantalos taken care of, Zeus reassembled Pelops and brought him back to life, with the exception of his eaten shoulder, which was replaced with an ivory prosthetic made by Hephaestus.
The Heraion was a temple dedicated to Hera. It is one of the oldest temples in the sanctuary, dating back to approximately 590 BCE. The structure included columns painted with images of women who won the Heraia, an athletic competition made up of running events. Every 4 years, 16 women were chosen to make a veil dedicated to Hera. These women also organized the competition, though they did not compete in it. The Heraia was unique for its focus on female athletes, in contrast to the male-exclusive Olympic Games.
According to Pausanias, the Heraion was filled with several statues and votive offerings. Besides statues of Hera and Zeus, there was also a marble statue of Hermes holding an infant Dionysos, a masterpiece of the famous sculptor Praxiteles, which has survived to the present day. Other statues mentioned by the traveller have disappeared, including statues of the Hesperides, Athena, Apollo, Demeter, Kore, and more. Pausanias also described different offerings, such as the chest of Kypselos, the first tyrant of Corinth. When Kypselos was a baby, his mother put him in this chest to hide him from the Bacchidae, who were seeking to consolidate their power in the city. As thanks to the gods, Kypselos later dedicated the chest to Olympia. The temple also contained the disc of Iphtos, which was inscribed with the truce put in place by the Eleans during the Olympic Games. Finally, there was the golden ivory table of Colotes, where the olive wreaths intended for Olympic victors were displayed. Beside the temple was the altar of Hera, which since 1936 has served to light the modern Olympic flame.
Hera was the goddess of women, marriage, family, and childbirth. She ruled Mount Olympus as queen of the gods, along with her husband and brother Zeus. Many mythological stories paint her as being annoyed at Zeus's many lovers and illegitimate offspring. In Greek art, Hera is usually depicted as matronly and regal, often wearing a crown or sitting on a throne. She is also sometimes seen holding a pomegranate, a symbol of both fertility and death. Hera's cult was very popular across Greece, and Olympia even minted her image on its coinage.
Wait, hang on, I want to go back.
The Hera it is restricted every
And a thunderbolt. Okay. Hera played a part in several myths. One such famous story is the Judgment of Paris, a beauty contest between Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena during the wedding of Pelios. All the gods were invited except Eris, the goddess of discord. When she decided to come anyway, she was turned away on the order of Zeus. Angered, Eris threw a golden apple into the celebration with an inscription that read, "To the fairest," or "To the most beautiful." Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena all claimed to be the fairest, and thus the rightful owner of the apple. None wanted to arbitrate the goddess's argument, so Zeus asked Hermes to bring them to Mount Ida to be judged by Paris, the son of the Trojan king Priam. Each goddess tried to sway Paris with a promise. Hera promised he would rule Asia. Athena offered him wisdom, fame, and glory, and Aphrodite promised to make Helion of Sparta the most beautiful mortal in the world. His wife Paris chose Aphrodite, and the other goddesses, enraged, brought about the Trojan War. Wait, hang on, what was the thing? The marble statue. What's this? Although women were not allowed to compete in the Olympic Games, it is still possible for them to win the equestrian events. This is because horse and chariot races awarded not the jockeys or chariot drivers, but the owners of the horses. The first woman to participate in and win one of these races was the Spartan princess Kaineska. She won events both in 396 BCE and in the following Olympiad, and her victories made her world famous. She even erected a statue of herself and her horses in Olympia. After her death, she was made a hero in Sparta, and a shrine was built in her honor. Following Kaineska, other women like Irlianos of Sparta, Berenike, Queen of Egypt, Belestice of Macedonia, and Timerta of Elis also went on to win equestrian events.
One of the highlights of the Olympic Games was a ceremony that took place on the third day of the festival. It began with a procession of athletes, ambassadors, Hellenodikai, and animals. The group made their way around the Altis until they arrived at the Temple of Zeus. Then the animals were brought in front of the altar of Zeus and offered as a sacrifice. This sacrifice was known as a hecatomb, a word that originally described the sacrifice of 100 oxen. During the hecatomb, the bones and legs of the animals were burned and carried to the top of a mound of ashes from previous sacrifices. Meanwhile, the meat of the animals was saved for a large banquet held later in the evening.
The sanctuary of Olympia is an ancient religious place long before the creation of the games. The Atlas was home to an oracle of Gaia. Gaia was a Greek primordial deity who was seen as the personification of the earth. Her oracle was later supplanted by an oracle of Zeus, Oranos, though it is possible the two coexisted for a time. The oracle of Zeus also eventually disappeared, probably because of the development of other major oracular sites like Delphi and Dodona. However, divination continued to be practiced in Olympia in the form of soothsayers. Soothsayers were among the principal priests in Olympia. They engaged in a practice called horoscopy, in which they studied the entrails of sacrificed animals to interpret the thoughts of Zeus.
The Olympic Games were dedicated to Zeus, and all the ceremonies and events were hosted in his honor. It is no surprise that the largest temple in the sanctuary was the Temple of Zeus. While most temples were restricted to priests, the Temple of Zeus welcomed all who visited Olympia. This openness was most likely meant to show off the gold and ivory statue of Zeus that stood within the temple's walls. The building also featured art depicting both versions of the Olympic festival's founding myth. The eastern pediment showed a scene from the legendary race between Pelops and Oinomaos. The temple's metapiece, meanwhile, showed the 12 labors of Heracles, the other mythical founder of the games.
Not only was the Temple of Zeus the largest temple in Olympia, it was also the largest temple in all of the Peloponnese region.
Zeus was the god of sky and thunder, and king of the Olympians. He ruled the world from his home on Mount Olympus. The child of Cronus the Titan, Zeus overthrew his father and cast the Titans out in a great battle known as the Titanomachy. He had children of his own with his wife Hera, including Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, and Eileithyia. He also had many children without Hera, much to her consternation. But there are too many to list here. Zeus was believed to have control over the lives of mortals, as his many epithets attest to. For example, his title Hawkios made him a keeper of oaths, while Xenios was the name conferred to him as a protector of hospitality. In Greek art, Zeus was usually depicted holding a thunderbolt and sitting on a throne, befitting his position as king.
Zeus's numerous extramarital dalliances with mortal women provoked the rage of the very jealous Hera. They also resulted in the birth of many Greek heroes. Zeus would often transform himself for the purpose of seduction. For example, he approached Antiope as Satyr, transformed into a swan for Leda, and changed into a bull for Europa. Sometimes he even impersonated other humans, like when he appeared to Alcmene as her husband Amphitryon, an act of deception that led to the birth of Heracles. You could just come here and chill out, couldn't you?
The Temple of Zeus was home to the chryselephantine statue of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The statue, made of gold, ivory, and wood, was sculpted by the renowned artist Phidias. At 13 meters tall, it was as impressive looking as it was difficult to maintain. Oil was used to protect the wood and ivory from cracking and to prevent general decay. While the statue does not exist today, it was thankfully described by Pausanias in great detail, so its legacy lives on.
The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World is a list of 7 remarkable constructions from antiquity. The oldest version of this list dates back to the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE and is attributed to Antipater of Sidon. Incredibly, the oldest of these wonders is also the only one to have survived, the Great Pyramid of Giza. All the others were destroyed, including the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassos, the Temple of Artemis of Ephesus, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and the Colossus of Rhodes. The Colossus of Rhodes was last built in 280 BCE, and the one with the shortest lifespan, as it was destroyed by an earthquake about 50 years later. Oh, that's the end of the tour.
Hello again. I hope you enjoyed your visit and feel a little bit closer to the gods. Well, as close as a mortal can get. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Excellent. Let's see what you remember. Your first question is a simple one. Which goddess was Zeus's wife?
Error.
Correct. Not only was Ida
Oh, I should have
Zeus's
selected the
wife,
wrong ones.
she was his sister as well. But let's move on to the next question. What kind of contest did Pelops win in his quest to marry Hippodamia?
Chariot?
Yes, Pelops won a chariot race, thanks to Poseidon's help. And now, the final question. What was inscribed on the cup found near Phidias' workshop?
World's best dad.
I don't think Phidias had any children, but even if he did, let it be known that I am the world's best dad. Try a different answer.
Was it I belong to Phidias?
Phidias was a great sculptor, but I don't think he was arrogant enough to advertise the fact on the cup. Try again.
Keep calm.
No, that would be a little too on the nose. Try another answer. Correct! Apparently, Phidias was very possessive of his things. Perhaps someone from the sanctuary kept stealing them. But I'm getting off track. Excellent work, friend! You honor the gods with your great wisdom. Farewell for now, my friend. Hello again! I hope you went well. Is there anything else? Excellent! Correct.
Oh, you can't. You can
Yeah.
go through them again.
Of course! Follow me, my friend!
Huh. Lots to do to 100%, aren't there? Walk through Athens' most popular meeting place and discover its vibrant markets and monuments.
Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the Agora of Athens. I love this Agora. Where else could you find a common fish merchant and an extravagant jewelry seller within a few feet of each other? It's that kind of variety that makes city life so rich and exciting. The Agora is the beating heart of any Greek city. It is a place where all types of people may gather, from citizens and foreigners to magistrates and philosophers. All manner of business is conducted here, including political meetings, legal proceedings, and trade. When you finish exploring, come find me, and we can talk more. See you soon, wanderer. Enjoy your visit. I will see you soon.
The Agora was the civic center of Athens, but it wasn't only frequented by politicians and city officials. The area housed a market where people could purchase food and other goods from merchants. It was also frequented by philosophers, who used the public space to establish schools and pass on their teachings to students. Religion had its place as well. Temples dedicated to Hephaestus and Apollo were located in the Agora, along with the altar of the 12 gods and the monument of the eponymous heroes.
The Panathenaic Way is the Athenian Agora's main street. It runs from the Dipylon Gate up to the Acropolis. Its name is derived from the Panathenaic festival and held every 4 years in honor of the city's patron goddess Athena. At first, the festival was only religious, but over time it expanded to include athletic events and cultural competitions as well. The Panathenaic Way hosted the climax of the festival, a procession that ran all the way up to the Temple of Athena on the Acropolis. However, the road was also used for some of the festival's athletic events, including the chariot races and foot races. 2005, is that like a nostalgic photo?
The painted stoa, or stoa poikile, derived its name from the panel paintings on its wall. The paintings were created in the 5th century BCE by famous artists like Polygnotus and depicted Greek military victories like the Battle of Marathon. The stoa served as a public meeting place for citizens, but it was especially popular with philosophers, who used the space to pass on their teachings. In 301 BCE, the philosopher Zeno of Kition chose the Stoa Poikile as the location for his school of philosophy, the appropriately dubbed Stoicism.
Stoicism. Greek painting goes back to at least the Minoan civilization. Some astonishing examples of the art of the time have even survived, including several of Minos's palace in Knossos. At first, wall paintings were mostly found in temples or public buildings, but they started to appear in private buildings in the 5th century BCE. Most painters were considered artisans, but some became very renowned. Polygnotos was the first of these famous painters. He painted large compositions of events such as the sack of Troy or the Stoa of Poikile, in addition to creating works for the Lesh of the Cnidians in Delphi. Polygnotos and his two contemporaries Mykon and Penaianos began what is considered to be the greatest period of Greek painting. Kition.
Trade in the Agora was supervised by magistrates. There were 5 agoranomoi, who kept order in the market, controlled the quality of goods, and collected market dues. This provided revenue to the city and helped pay the magistrates and those in charge of maintaining order. The market benefited everyone. Customers bought what they needed, merchants made their living, and city officials received the money they needed to keep the wheels of democracy turning.
The agora offered a variety of products for purchase. Many merchants were grouped together by the category of their products into what was called circles or guilds. Slaves who made up an important section of Athens' population were also available in the agora. However, trade was not limited to the agora. Several craftsmen and sculptors lived in the slopes of the Areopagos hill. Potters and manufacturers worked in the Kerameikos neighborhood, and metal workers were stationed around the Hephaestion. Those selling products could be professional merchants, kapelloi, artisans selling their own products directly, or even peasants selling their surplus.
The original Temple of Apollo Patrous was built around 535 BCE by Pisistratos, but was destroyed by the Persians during their invasion a few decades later. It long remained in ruins, except for the altar, which was left standing as a reminder of the Persian sacrilege. Eventually, a new temple was built in the 4th century BCE. Inside was a statue made by Euphranor, the same artist who painted in the Stoa of Zeus. The temple held special significance in Athens, as it was connected to the origin of the city's people. The name Patros, meaning fatherly, referenced the belief that Apollo was the father of Aeon, founder of the Ionian Greeks, from whom all Athenians are descended.
The Ionians were one of the 4 major Greek tribes, along with the Dorians, the Aeolians, and the Achaeans. The Ionians spread from Ionia, a region on the east coast of the Aegean Sea. They also founded several colonies, most in Sicily and South Italy. Athenians claimed that Attica was the motherland of all Ionians, and that Ion, the eponymous hero of the Ionians, was an Athenian by way of his mother. According to mythology, Ion was the son of Creusa, who herself was the daughter of Erechtheus, a mythical king of Athens.
The Temple of Hephaestos overlooks the Agora from the Kolonos Agoreus hill. Today, it is one of the best preserved temples in Greece, owing to its conversion to a church in the Middle Ages. But while this transformation preserved the structure, it also damaged the surrounding sculptures. The temple was dedicated not only to Hephaestos, the god of metallurgy, but also to Athena Ergane, goddess of arts and crafts. Nearly every part of the Hephaestion was lavishly decorated with depictions of famous mythological events, like the labors of Theseus. The Theseus scenes gave the temple the nickname Thesion, a name that lives on today as a city district in Athens.
Because the Hephaestion was dedicated both to Hephaestos, the god of metallurgy, and Athena Ergane, the goddess of crafts and weaving, it is no surprise that many metalworking shops were installed on the same hill as the temple, all of which contain evidence of the production of weapons and armor. Similarly, as Athena was also the patron goddess of potters, the pottery quarter known as the Kerameikos was also just behind the Hephaestion.
Boulaterion was another building in the Agora that contributed to the democratic process. It housed the Athenian Council of Citizens, the Boulei. This council of 500 was composed of 50 members from each Greek tribe, all of whom served a one-year term. They were chosen by lot from among citizens over 30. Every month, one group of 50 was chosen to lead the Boulei's executive committee, the Prytaneis. The Prytaneis met every day of the month and called meetings of the full council in the Boulaterion, where they spent their time discussing bills.
Athens' democratic system ensured a rotation of the people who held key functions. For example, each tribe held the Prytany for 1 month, and magistrates were elected for one-year terms. However, there was also a procedure that was put in place to banish citizens believed to be a threat to the state. This procedure was known as the ostracism, and was originally put in place to prevent the rise of possible tyrants. Every year in the 6th Prytany, the assembly asked Athenians if they wished to hold an ostracism. If they voted yes, the ostracism would be held later on during the 8th Prytany. The ostracism vote was held in an enclosure in the Agora and supervised by the archontes and the boulei. To vote, a citizen put the name of the candidate they wished to ostracize in a pottery fragment called an ostraca, or an ostraca, then dropped the ostraca into an urn. The ostracism was considered valid if a minimum of 6,000 people voted, and the man with the largest number of votes was ostracized. The ostracized man was given 10 days to leave the city and had to remain in exile for 10 years. However, he did not forfeit his citizenship and property, and could even be recalled by the assembly in the case of an emergency, which happened to Cimon in 461 BCE. Famous politicians who were ostracized include Xanthippos, Themistocles, Alcibiades, and Thucydides, who used the time provided by his exile to write his history of the Peloponnesian War. Bills passed by the Prytaneis had to be submitted to the citizen assembly, the ecclesia. The boulei and the ecclesia worked together in coordinating and calling the assembly. When laws were voted on, they sent the relevant decrees to the city's magistrates and inhabitants. They were the link between decisions made in the assembly and their implementation. The boulei also supervised other matters like city finances, magistrate coordination, sacred affairs, etc.
The Prytaneon was one of the most important buildings in the Agora, as it was the headquarters of the Prytaneis. The Prytaneis was the executive committee of the boulei, who ran the city's daily operations. The Prytaneis dined in the Prytaneon, and 17 of them slept on site to ensure there were always officials available to deal with emergencies. The Prytaneon also housed the official weights and measures of the city. The Fire of Hestia, which provided sacred fire for all public sacrifices, was also located there.
The Prytaneis were magistrates from the boulei council of 500. The council was evenly divided amongst the 10 Athenian tribes, with each tribe having 50 members. The Prytaneis were in charge of the Prytaneon. They held their position for a 1-month term called a Prytany, after which a new tribe would be chosen for the Prytaneis. Every day one member of the Prytaneis was chosen by lot to be the epistates, the president of the council. No member was allowed to hold his office more than once. In 406 BCE, a great loss of ships and men in the Battle of Arygnosai angered the Athenians, who demanded punishment without due process for the generals involved in the battle. However, the philosopher Socrates was the epistates at the time, and he refused to vote on the matter, stating that he would never perform an action that wasn't in accordance with the law.
The Heliaia was the most important court in Athens, and was presided over by a group of judges called Heliasts. Judging was a regular part of an Athenian citizen's life, with trials happening almost every day. Heliasts were chosen randomly based on two factors. First, that they were on the official list of 6,000 potential Heliasts. Second, that they were present at court on the day of the trial. A stipend of 2 obols was established by Pericles to compensate for the loss of work while on Heliast duty, and also to encourage participation in the judiciary process.
During the 5th century BCE, the regime of Athens implemented an important innovation to encourage participation in the city's democracy. At the instigation of Pericles, a special allowance called the misthos was created. At first, the misthos was originally given to Buliates and Heliasts judges, but in the 4th century BCE, a mythos ecclesiasticos was created for the participation in the Athenian assembly. The mythos was a payment that allowed even the poorest citizen to perform public functions. Strangely, even though there were democratic regimes elsewhere in Greece, the mythos system only existed in Athens. Theseus is a hero linked with the mythological origins of Athens. He was responsible for the political unification of Attica, and as such was considered a symbol of Athenian democracy. The myth of Theseus goes back to the 7th century BCE, but it wasn't until the 5th century BCE that he started to be incorporated into Athens' civic ideology as the founder of the city. Theseus was the son of Aegeus, king of Athens, and Aethra, daughter of Pythias. Aethra was possessed by Poseidon, which means Theseus had a divine father in addition to a mortal one. Aethra gave birth to Theseus on the island of Sapphirus. After growing up, Theseus travelled from Sapphirus to Athens, accomplishing several labours along the way. These labours include killing the bandits Periphetes, Charon, and Procruste, and killing Chromionian sow, a wild pig that was ravaging the region of Chromion. However, Theseus is best known for his capture of the bull in Marathon and killing the ferocious Minotaur. The monument of the eponymous heroes was built in honor of the heroes from whom the 10 founding tribes of Athens took their names. The bronze statues were erected on a marble base that also provided an official notice board for the Athenian people. Athens was divided into 10 tribes, with Cleisthenes reorganized the political system in 508 BCE. The tribe's 10 heroes were chosen from amongst the mythical figures of Athens by the oracle at Delphi. The chosen figures were Erechtheus, Aegeus, Pandion, Leos, Acamas, Oeneus, Cecropos II, Hippothune, Ajax, and Antiochos. Athens' tribal structure meant that citizens voted by tribes, and the Council of the Boulae featured a rotation of tribal delegations.
In the Agora, an Athenian could buy and sell many different products. The permanent retail market was divided into sections according to the category of merchandise. Merchants and craftsmen who worked in the market could be citizens, foreigners, or even freed slaves. They sold everything from food and clothes to jewelry and slaves. With so much variety, competition was fierce, and that competition helped regulate the market's prices.
Weights and measures varied from city to city. As a result, transactions in the agora had to respect the official weights and measures of Athens, which were kept in the Bouleuterion. Consequently, merchants were recruited to visit the Bouleuterion to test their measuring devices against the city's official standards. The weight system was closely linked to the weight standard of coinage. The basic unit was the obol, 0.72 grams, but there were others including the drachma, 4.3 grams, the mina, 430 grams, and the talent, 25.86 kilograms. There were also units for liquid volumes such as the medimnos, CL 52 liters. Wait, is that cubic? Which was used to calculate grain transactions, and the mitretes 40 liters, which was used to measure wine. Special magistrates known as metronomoi were appointed to supervise the adequate use of weights and measures in the agora. Move, dog. Wait, you can run through the dog. Oh, it's gone.
The Heliaio wasn't the only court in Athens. This other court was located next to the South Stoa. Historians believe it to be a court based on the discovery of a nearby box containing 7 bronze ballots. These ballots were used by jurors to give their verdicts. The reason trials were so common in Athens might have been related to their democratic regime, which promoted the individual's right to demand reparations for injustice. However, not all legal matters were settled in this fashion. If a claim was small enough, it was settled individually by a magistrate. Public trials were reserved for more serious offenses, such as murder, theft, and political crimes.
Athens' most famous judicial affair is probably the trial of Socrates in 399 BCE. The philosopher was accused of impiety against the pantheon of Athens and corruption of the city's youth. The events of Socrates' trial have been related by 2 of his disciples, Plato and Xenophon. It is possible that the accusations against Socrates were politically motivated, as many of his friends, including Critias, Charmides, and Alcibiades, were against the city's democracy, which was already in jeopardy after Athens' defeat in the Peloponnesian War. Furthermore, even though he denied it, Socrates was often associated with the sophists, who were being used as scapegoats for the loss of Athens' traditional values. Whatever the reasons for the accusations, Socrates was found guilty, and since the law provided no specific penalty for his offences, both the accusers and the accused were required to suggest a possible sentence. Socrates proposed to be fed in the Prytaneion, while his accusers demanded the death penalty. Always committed to following the law, Socrates attempted the fatal verdict and was executed by drinking hemlock. Wait, wasn't there a... Oh yeah, there was. Trials. Trials were presided over by the official magistrates, and the jury was composed of citizens or heliasts. Any citizen could make an accusation, and if the defendant was convicted, the accuser received a portion of the sentenced fine. This practice led to the eventual appearance of professional accusers known as sycophants. The accuser and defendant were given equal time to speak, and their allotted time was measured by a water clock called a clepsydra. Their speeches were often prepared by professionals known as logographs. After the speeches, jurors secretly cast their votes by putting a token in two urns. Interestingly, if the accusation was unfounded, the accuser could be convicted instead. Spy by the take a picture. Yeah, we know how to do that. I might leave these discovery sites. We've already done 5 though. 6, 17, 5. No, there's a lot in there. They'll probably add up. Abantis Island. Oh, is that 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just them, isn't it? Lemnos. Oh, there's one hidden. Well, I remember we didn't read all the stuff out for Assassin's Creed 2, did we? And the early ones.
The mint was where the city made its coinage. It is believed that Athens' mint was in the city's agora, as modern excavations have turned up small disc-shaped pieces of metal used to make coins. Much of the silver required for minting coinage came from the Lavrion silver mines. Athens was so dependent on the mines that when they lost them during the Peloponnesian War, the city was forced to melt down a gold statue of Athena to mint gold coins and avert a monetary crisis.
In ancient Greece, every city-state struck its own coinage. This meant that the coins of one city only had legal value in their own territory. Consequently, if someone traveled to another city, they needed to exchange their foreign coins for local currency. The need for currency exchange explains the prevalence of money changers in the agora and in pots like Piraeus. Much like today, money changers made a profit from their exchanges. Unfortunately, with the invention of coinage also came the invention of counterfeiting. Counterfeit money was such a problem in Athens that the city appointed a special magistrate called the Agoroscopos, silver examiner, to inspect coins in the agora. If forgers were caught, they faced the death penalty. Oh wow. They died. 2007.
You have now experienced the Agora, following in the footsteps of countless Athenians before you. I hope the trip has impressed upon you how important this place was to trade, politics, and law. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Very well. Let's begin. Which philosopher's school took its name from the painted stoa?
Socrates? Should you try and do the wrong ones?
Yes, Zenon taught
Oh.
at the stoa, and so he and his followers were dubbed Stoics. Time for another question. What other name has the Iphistion gone by?
Dunno.
The Temple of Hephaestus depicted scenes from the labors of Heracles, but it was never known as the Heraklion. Try again. That is another building entirely, located on Athens' Acropolis. Try another answer. The Voulefterion was where the council known as the Vouli met to discuss civic matters. Keep trying. Correct. The name was inspired by the scenes showing the hero Theseus, which decorate the temple. Only one question left. When Athens lost the Lavrion silver mines during the Peloponnesian War, which statue did they melt down to mint new coins? There was a statue of Apollo Patros in the Agora, but it was made from limestone, and thus could not be melted into metal coins. Try again. Athenians used the monument of eponymous heroes as a notice board, but its statues were not melted for minting material. Keep trying. No, it's quite difficult to mint coins from burned wood. Try another answer. Correct. The Athenians melted down a statue of Athena to mint gold coins. It's clear you are very familiar with the Agora of Athens. I'm impressed. As you wish. Let's see what else Greece has in store for you.
The more things change. Discover the marvelous oracular site of Delphi and learn about its importance.
Here, visitor, and welcome to this sacred site. Delphi is an amazing place to visit if you're looking for information. I've come here on several occasions in search of answers to some particularly puzzling questions. And sometimes, I even found them. This is Delphi, home of the renowned oracle. Greeks considered it the navel of the world. Pilgrims and kings journeyed here from all over Greece and beyond, seeking advice from Apollo through the voice of his interpreter, Pythia. During your visit, you will experience the sanctuary through a pilgrim's eye and discover how important oracles and prophecies were to the people of Greece. Now, go off and begin your pilgrimage. I will be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
How do we check what we've done? So this is all of them. 7594. Did it say there were 30? I think there are 30, aren't there? 5, 10. Hang on, 5, 10. 20. Are there? Oh, I don't know.
On their journey to the Temple of Apollo, pilgrims walked this sacred path up Mount Parnassus. The summer sun beat down hot on their backs. Along the way, they took in the magnificent monuments, treasuries, and statues that adorned the road. These landmarks were tokens of people's reverence for the oracle's benevolence. All were dedicated to Apollo, and most were offered by cities to commemorate military victories. The monuments represented not only their donors' piety, but also their power and wealth. The sanctity of Delphi has endured to the present day, and visitors still take this very same route.
One of the largest contributors of information on Delphi is the French School at Athens, an institute that has been researching the site since 1860. Its work has led to a very deep understanding of Delphi and its evolution over time. One of the main challenges early on was that the iconic site laid under meters of sediment located in the very much inhabited village of Castri. Through the school's efforts, 1,000 villagers were completely relocated. With the village emptied, a railway was built to help remove excavated materials, allowing researchers to rediscover the sacred site. Yeah, I think we'll leave the locations, and I might read them out, like on a different channel or something, later on. Like I said I was going to do with the old Assassin's Creeds. Pottery. Oh, I'm trapped. What's this one? Okay, it's not working.
One of the most impressive dedications to Apollo came from the Cnidians, a Greek population that colonized the island of Lipari, north of Sicily. The story behind this dedication is notable. The Cnidians were at war with the Etruscans in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Seeking a good omen, the Cnidians consulted the oracle, and following her advice, they successfully captured 20 enemy ships. To thank Apollo, they offered the god the same number of statues as ships seized.
Today, only fragments of this monument remain, so the best record we have of it comes from the ancient writer Pausanias. According to him, the Cnidians and Liparians also wanted the dedication to mark the triumph of the Greekness over what they call barbarism. What? What?
One of the most impressive seeking a good.
What was the picture called? 1st century BCE Roman period. Apollo. Yeah, we'll come back to the discovery points. I might read them out properly.
Next to the Naxian Sphinx stood a simple structure to display offerings from the Athenians, most of which were spoils of war. In particular, these offerings, called ex-votos, were prows of sunken Persian ships. The Athenians built the portico after their naval victory over the Persians in 478 BCE. Next to the Naxian Sphinx stood a simple...
Alright, that repeats. The Athenian portico celebrated a victory over the Persians at the very end of the Greco-Persian Wars. The portico was a sign of Athens' increasing power. The power it held over the rest of Greece left many other cities unhappy, including Sparta. Eventually, the rivalry between Sparta and Athens would escalate into a full-blown conflict known as the Peloponnesian War.
Once arriving before the temple, pilgrims wishing to consult the oracle had to first pay a tax. This tax gave them the initial right to approach the altar of Apollo and make an animal sacrifice to the god. But before proceeding to the Pythia, the preliminary ritual had to succeed. If the animal reacted favorably and showed signs of acceptance to the god, it was sacrificed, and the pilgrim would be allowed to enter the temple to question the Pythia.
The altar of Apollo was a large marble table. Before the sacrifice began, a fire would be lit on the table. The sacrificial animal, usually an ox, was then stunned with a mallet. The animal's skin was given to the priest, while its flesh was divided into two parts, the bones and fat, which were offered to the god, and the meat, which was distributed amongst the people who brought the animal, then grilled and eaten.
At last we arrive at the Temple of Apollo, where the oracle relayed her prophecies. The temple was the final destination of those seeking an audience with the Pythia, and its appearance matched the majesty of its purpose. Atop its imposing columns, the structure's pediments displayed famous mythological scenes, sculpted by the renowned Greek artist Antenor. But as grand as the temple looked from the outside, it paled in comparison with what happened within.
Originally constructed in the 7th century BCE, the Temple of Apollo burned down in 458 BCE, only to be rebuilt towards the end of the 6th century BCE with the help of funds from an aristocratic Athenian family. The temple was destroyed again by the earthquake in the 4th century BCE and required further reconstruction by the architect Spintharos. This time it managed to stay standing until 390 CE, when it was destroyed by the Roman Emperor Theodosius.
I will see you again soon, traveler.
Prophecies were given in the most restricted part of the temple, the adytum, by a chaste woman known as the Pythia. Before delivering prophecies, she first purified herself with water, then burned laurel leaves and barley flour to begin the ritual. Finally, while seated on a tripod surrounded by offerings, the Pythia delivered Apollo's messages. Her words were often strange and indecipherable, and required further interpretation by the temple's priests. Despite much research, the exact causes of the oracle's behavior while prophesying are debated to this day.
The Pythia's predictions were often incomprehensible to common mortals and required interpretation by priests. Herodotus tells us that the famously rich king Croesus once misunderstood one of the oracle's prophecies. After asking about the outcome of a war, he would declare the oracle predicted a kingdom would fall. Unfortunately for Croesus, it was his own kingdom that fell right into the Persians' hands.
Myths say that while searching for an oracle who could impart their words to mortals, Apollo established a sanctuary on Mount Parnassus. Apollo took over this site by slaying its sinister guardian, the snake-like python.
Like a python? For Greeks, the fight with Pytho explained the foundation of the oracle and its sanctuary. It also symbolized the triumph of civilization over the forces of chaos, much like the victory of Zeus over Typhon or Heracles over various different monsters. Return to the tour guide.
Your visit is complete. I hope you now understand how important this sanctuary was, and how it affected the lives of people both in the Greek world and beyond its borders. To be honest, I could speak about Delphi all day. But what would you like to do now?
Take a quiz.
Ah, you wish to test your knowledge. Let's begin with a simple question. What did the oracle use to purify herself before her prediction?
Oh, I don't know. Animal blood.
While animal sacrifices were required to see the oracle, their blood was not used in the purification ritual. Try another answer.
Water.
Correct. The
Oh.
oracle used water for purification. Time for another question. Which god was believed to speak through the oracle at Delphi?
Zeus.
There is evidence of oracular sites dedicated to Zeus, but Delphi was not one of them. Keep trying.
Don't know. Hades.
The god of the underworld was both feared and respected by mortals, but he did not speak through the oracle at Delphi. Try another answer. Yes, the oracle allegedly spoke the words of Apollo, which were then interpreted by priests. One final question for you. Delphi is situated on which mountain?
Don't know. Etna.
No. You may want to check a map. Correct. Delphi stood on the slope of Mount Parnassus. Well done, traveler. Your knowledge rivals that of the wisest philosophers. Of course. Follow me.
Wait, what? There was another answer, wasn't there, for something earlier on? I forgot to go back. Oh well, I think it's too late now. I'm not going to remember. Tours. Was it this one? Oh shit, I should have remembered. We're at the port, aren't we? I think.
Greetings, one. Very well. Which philosopher's school took its name from the painted Stoa? Socrates was one of the greatest minds in Greece, but there are no records of him teaching at the painted Stoa. Try a different answer.
Oh, was that it? I think that was it.
Yes, that... The Vouleftirion... That... Only when... I think... God... The Agua... It is a pole when...
Wait, hang on. Let's just... I'm going to skip through.
The area... It was also... Religion had its place as well.
Oh no. Have I messed up the order? Piraeus would be the next one, wouldn't it? Piraeus. What does it say? Your progress will be mucked up. You have quit the tour.
This pig during night.
Port of Piraeus.
On their journey to along the Ormus.
Alright, no. I want him to take us to the next suggested one. I'll put that on my back burner of list of things to do. We'll do the discovery sites. Do the discovery sites. Because I can take screenshots and we can edit them into a proper video, can't we? Probably.
Next to the Nac and be want this, but if the at the temp atop it.
I will see you again soon.
Before focus. Myths sub prophecies were given in the most restricted part of the temple, the Aditum, by a chaste woman known. Before delivering prophecies, she first purified herself with water, then burned laurel leaves and barley flour to begin the ritual. Finally, while seated on a tripod surrounded by offerings, the Pythia delivered Apollo's messages. Her words were often strange and indecipherable, and required further interpretation by the temple's priests. Despite much research, the exact causes of the oracle's behavior while prophesying are debated to this day.
Your visit is complete. I hope you now understand how important this sanctuary was, and how it affected the lives of people. What?
Let's just make sure we've done it.
Correct. Yeah. What? Correct. Delphi. Well done, traveler. Your knowledge rivals that of the wisest philosophers. Of course. Follow me.
Hmm. $30 tours. Wonder how long it's going to take me then. I don't know. We'll be done when we'll be done. It is Piraeus. To the bustling port of Piraeus.
Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the port of Piraeus. Piraeus is one of the busiest, most important ports in the Greek world. Money flows through here like a river that runs all the way to Athens. Acting as a port for Athens, Piraeus welcomed merchants, goods, and travelers from all over the world. It was a central part of Athens' economy, but it was also fortified enough to protect the city's considerable fleet. When you finish exploring the port, find me, and we will talk further. Enjoy your visit. I will see you soon.
Piraeus, a peninsula southwest of Athens, became the city's main port after the politician Themistocles encouraged the development of its natural harbors. These developments led to the gradual abandonment of the older harbor of Phaleron. Piraeus's fortifications were further developed by Cimon and Pericles, along with the long walls which ensured goods could still be moved during sieges. Piraeus was divided into three main sectors: the military port, the emporion, and the residential area. By the 5th century BCE, it had become not only Athens' naval headquarters, but also the mercantile center of the Mediterranean.
Oh shit. Piraeus was divided into three sectors: Zea and Munichea on the east side and the Grand Cantharos harbour in the west side. Piraeus's agora, called the Hippodameian Agora in honour of the architect Hippodamos, was located near the cave of Zea. It functioned as a local market, but also as a political and military meeting place. The Munichea harbour was Piraeus's main military port and was mainly made up of storage areas and ship sheds. The Cantharos harbour, which was also the largest natural harbour in the Mediterranean Sea, housed the Emporion, where international trade took place. 1898, J.G. Fraser.
Piraeus's development during the 5th century BCE attracted a large population. Many craftsmen, merchants, bankers, sailors, and ship owners moved to the port in great numbers. The population was a mix of Greek citizens, foreign visitors, and immigrants, known as metics. The variety of the port's inhabitants gave Piraeus a cosmopolitan atmosphere. Most of the residents were involved in trade, but others worked on shipbuilding or in larger-scale industries like shield factories. Piraeus's commercial focus offered many opportunities for those seeking to increase their wealth and status. One such rags-to-riches tale is that of Passion, a slave who eventually became a citizen and earned a fortune thanks to his bank and his shield factory.
Oh shit. I keep pressing that to get more info. Metics made up a large part of the port's population. It's estimated that at the end of the 5th century BCE there were anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 metics living in Piraeus. These varied inhabitants added to the port's cosmopolitan atmosphere. Metics also had an impact on religious practices in Piraeus. From at least the 5th century BCE onward, Metics introduced the worship of various Eastern deities such as the Thracian goddess Bendis and the Egyptian god Isis. The cults these immigrants brought with them created a varied and colourful spiritual life within the neighbourhood.
Piraeus was a demi, or district, of Attica. Because of its size, function, and varied population, it had a much more complicated administrative structure than other demes. Above all, Piraeus was closely monitored and controlled by the Athenian assembly due to its importance to the city. Within the port, there were two separate categories of trade: international trade, which took place in the Emporion, and retail trade, which was managed by Kapoloi in Piraeus's agora.
Oh, I keep pressing that. Why do I keep pressing search triangle?
Within the port and
sorry. In 393 BCE, Piraeus's Emporium was attacked in a daring raid by the Spartan Teleutius. Telotius was a commander of a small fleet based on the island of Aegina. His forces assailed 12 triremes into the grand harbour at daybreak and took the Athenians by surprise. As a result, Telotius was able to capture a number of merchant ships. The raid ended up discouraging foreign traders from travelling to Piraeus, which put Athens' economy in jeopardy. Consequently, Athens was forced to negotiate peace with Sparta. Peace with Sparta.
The Emporion was a commercial port dedicated to trading goods from overseas. All international transactions were required to be made within its limits and needed to be exclusively wholesale. Elected magistrates managed all business and laws in the port. Meanwhile, port authorities known as epimeletes oversaw trade and took care of the regulation of prices. This was an especially crucial duty, as the amount of supplies and goods could fluctuate wildly based on factors like bad harvests or lost cargo. Common products sold in the Emporion included vegetables, fruits, fish, leather, timber, marble, metal, weapons, and ceramics. According to Hermippos, Athens was also wealthy enough to afford the finest goods from all over the world, including figs from Rhodes, almonds from Thassos, oil from Samos, and wine from Chios. Taxes were collected on all merchandise that came into the Emporion, which provided Athens with a major source of income.
Well, hang on. That bit of thing was glitching out, wasn't it?
International elected magistrates managed all business, and meanwhile, port authorities, this was an especially crucial duty. Common products sold in the Emporion included vegetables, fruits, fish, leather, timber, marble, metal.
That slate was glitching out before, wasn't it? Never mind. Learn more. The epimeletes who administrated the Emporion were appointed on an annual basis. Their duties included overseeing trade and ensuring the quality of goods and commodities. They enforced rules of law and made sure no transactions were concluded outside the Emporion, and they supervised money changes and took care of complaints regarding exchange fraud. In large cities like Athens, the epimeletes shared some tasks with other specialized magistrates. These magistrates included the Nautodikai, who were in charge of justice, the Sitophilakes, who supervised the sale of grain, and the Pentateuchologi, who collected commercial taxes. I don't think I read that right, did I? Don't think I'm reading any of these Greek names properly.
After arriving in the Emporion, merchants set up samples of their goods in a display area called the Deigma. This was where citizens and foreigners gathered to officially make their deals, and almost all merchandise that came into the Emporion was traded within the area. The Deigma was under constant supervision by magistrates, who negotiated price control with the importers. They would occasionally give special privileges to those who agreed to sell at lower prices. These privileges ranged from tax exemptions to specially reserved seating in the theatre.
Nice. Athens was the head of the Delian League and would often wield its maritime power and influence against other Greek cities by creating trade blockage. For instance, when the sacred land between Attica and Megaris was occupied by the Spartan allied Megarians, Athens forbid Megara from trading in any harbour belonging to the Athenian Empire, and in doing so cut off the city's main economic resource. The stacking of gods.
Piraeus was a deme, and as such was supervised by a magistrate called the Demarchos. While most demarchoi were chosen locally within their deme, Piraeus was appointed directly by Athens, so the city could better monitor its commercial interests. In fact, matters regarding the Emporion, the military harbour, and the grain trade were regularly debated and decided by the Athenian assembly. Transactions within the Piraeus were supervised by metronomoi. These were magistrates responsible for keeping track of weights and measures. They made sure merchants' measurements were always accurate to prevent bad deals and scams. Even though Piraeus would eventually develop into a city in its own right, it always remained under the control of Athens.
The trade conducted in the Emporion was subjected to tighter surveillance than other places in Attica, and merchants who violated the rules could find themselves facing serious consequences. Metronomoi probably had the authority to impose penalty charges and bring fraudulent merchants to court, and other magistrates like agoranomoi and Sitophalakes likely had similar powers. Inscriptions from the 2nd century BCE suggest that magistrates also had the right to destroy any undesired container and confiscate its contents. Ah, damn. Hang on, bear with me.
Even though Piraeus commercial tax of 2%, or a pentecost, was placed on all cargo entering and leaving Piraeus. The tax was collected by a group of 5 people called Pentecostologoi. According to Andocides, this position could be bought for the hefty sum of 30 talents, or 180,000 drachmae. However, most of these officials made a profit of up to 6 talents, making the job very lucrative. While merchants were responsible for setting the value of their goods, Pentecostologoi had the power to challenge the value, if they saw fit. Furthermore, merchants were required to register with these officials before they could transport, display, and sell their goods. Overall, this system provided Piraeus, and by extension Athens, with a tremendous amount of money.
What? Justice in the Emporion was upheld by a group of magistrates known as the Nautodicae. The first record of Nautodicae goes back to around 450 BCE, and their increased presence at trials runs parallel to the increasing financial and political power of Athens. The Nautodicae were also responsible for administering the law of retaliation. According to this law, if a foreigner injured someone, the Nautodicae had the right to seize the goods or property of the perpetrator's fellow traders. As a result, the law of retaliation, some traders avoided certain harbours so as not to be penalised for their associates' actions. To counter the Nautodicae's power, some states had a judicial convention called a symbola. It protected merchants from harassment by ensuring them the right to be judged by a city court. The magistracy of the Nautodicae was eventually abolished in around 350 BCE. Holding a hydria.
The sale of grain was overseen by special magistrates called Sitophalakes. Since some Greek cities had a grain deficiency and relied heavily on imports, these officials were extremely important. Their duties encompassed all aspects of grain commerce, including price control and profit margins, to ensure Athens remained well fed. This is no surprise. Grain was so important to Athens that 2/3 of all stocks were required to be transported and sold at the city's agora by law. According to Demosthenes, the significance of the Sitophilakes was such that if they failed in their duties, they faced the death penalty.
The Peloponnesian War saw some changes in how bread was produced and consumed. Firstly, poor people began to eat bread, a food previously reserved for the rich. Similarly, bread started to be baked commercially rather than just in individual households, giving bakers the opportunity to make small fortunes. From a stater, dog. You can kind of run through the dog, can't you?
The Emporion operated on a foundation of credit and loans. Overseas commerce was handled by two types of tradespeople. Emporoi transported cargo in borrowed ships, while Naukleroi were ship owners who moved goods on their own vessels. Elsewhere in the Emporion were bankers and accountants who arranged loans and kept track of incoming and outgoing ships. Emporoi and Naukleroi financed their maritime voyages with these loans, which often had a high interest rate due to the dangers of sea travel. Emporoi used the loans to pay for both the cargo and the right to a ship, while Naukleroi only had to pay for their crew. Loans and interest were repaid upon a ship's return to port. However, in the event of a catastrophe such as a shipwreck, the merchant and ship owner were released from their obligations, and the losses were transferred to the lender.
In Greek cities, some temples held reserve funds stored in rows of pottery. These temples also provided loans. For example, according to an inscription from around 430 BCE, the Parthenon in Athens lent city funds at an interest rate of 6%.
You've returned. I hope you enjoyed your stroll through the port. Piraeus was important to Athens' commercial interests, but it eventually came into its own as a vibrant and bustling port. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. If you say so, let us see what you've learned, Wanderer.
I didn't really
First,
listen to
a
anything.
simple question. Which Athenian politician originally encouraged the development of Piraeus' natural harbors?
Leonidas.
Leonidas was a Spartan king, not an Athenian politician. Try another answer.
I knew that was wrong. Alcibiades.
By the time Alcibiades was born, Piraeus was already a thriving port. Keep trying.
Pericles.
Pericles did contribute to the port's development, but he was building off someone else's ideas. Try again. Correct. Themistocles saw Piraeus' potential as a port and encouraged its development. On to the next question. What did the Sitophilakes supervise?
Weights and measures.
It was metronomi who were in charge of Piraeus' weights and measures. Try again. Yes, Sitophilakes had the extremely important responsibility of handling all matters related to grain commerce. Only one question left. What was the name of the slave who took advantage of Piraeus' opportunities to earn themselves citizenship? Prometheus was the mythological figure who gave fire to mankind. I don't think he had much interest in business opportunities. Try another answer. You're very funny. Keep trying. Perseus was a legendary Gorgon-slaying hero, not a slave. Try again. Correct. Passion managed to earn a fortune and achieve citizenship thanks to both his bank and a successful shield business. Your knowledge of Piraeus is impressive. Well done, Wanderer. If you say first, which Athenian politician? Try. Coron, what did the city? No, the aptly named Pedicostologi collected the Pentecosti tax. Try another answer. Yes, sit on. What? Correct. Of course. Follow me, Wanderer.
Oh. Source is Greeks who borrowed it from the Phoenicians. Huh. The origins of language. That's interesting. Press for a bird's eye view of Greece. Oh right, that shows the discovery locations. Well, that would be helpful, won't it, later on? I won't read these in my streams. Tour the sanctuary of Asclepios and receive a primer on ancient Greek medicine.
Welcome, traveler, to the sanctuary of Asclepios, a place of rest and healing. The sanctuary of Asclepios is an amazing place, even for those with only a passing interest in medicine. It was a fascinating location, combining the mystical, religious, and scientific. And if someone happened to pass out, they'd luckily be surrounded by skilled physicians. This is the sanctuary of Asclepios, the god of medicine. It was here that the sick and weary came, seeking cures for their ailments. Sometimes the medical practitioners provided the cures, and sometimes the healing came from the gods themselves. This tour will help explain the inner workings of the sanctuary, as well as the unique way the Greeks approached medicine. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'll be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
The ill and infirm came to this sanctuary to pray and offer sacrifices to Asclepios, the god of medicine. According to myth, Asclepios was once a mortal physician who eventually became a god. He had many sanctuaries across Greece, but the most famous was in Epidaurus. When pilgrims passed through the entrance of the sanctuary, they could read this inscription: "When you enter the abode of the god which smells of incense, you must be pure, and thought is pure when you think with piety."
What is that? Hippocrates showing up concept art. Asclepios, like most Greek gods, had a backstory wreathed in fire and blood. He was the product of an affair between the god Apollo and a mortal woman named Coronis. Apollo killed Coronis after discovering she had been unfaithful and ordered her body burned on a funeral pyre. However, Apollo rescued his dead lover's unborn child from her womb before the fire consumed her body. Apollo gave the baby to the centaur Chiron, who raised Asclepios and taught him how to practice medicine. The healing cult of Asclepios was first attested to in Epidaurus, but slowly spread to different cities, exploding in popularity from the 4th century BC onwards. Some nice concept art from the game.
Medical steles constituted a sort of hub between medicine, religion, and the divine. They were slabs with inscriptions that praised Asclepios' virtues and merit, and described his methods of healing. The inscriptions relayed the dreams patients had within the abaton, one of the most important buildings in the sanctuary. The steles outlined the patient's name, their disease, and how they were cured by Asclepios. They were probably written by the sanctuary's priests, or at least under the priest's supervision. Asclepios was a complex deity. In addition to being a god, he was also a trained physician and disciple of the centaur Chiron.
Chiron. The miraculous cures chronicled in the medical steles weren't always clean and simple. Simple and clean. Below is an inscription with a more detailed procedure. A man with abscesses within his abdomen went asleep in the temple. He saw a dream. It seemed to him that the god ordered the servants who accompanied him to grip him and hold him tightly so that he could cut open his abdomen. The man tried to get away, but they gripped him and bound him to a door knocker. Thereupon Asclepius cut his belly open, removed the abscesses, and after having stitched him back up again, released him from his bonds, whereupon he walked out sound, but the floor of the abaton was covered with blood. He walked out. What, he was okay? What? That's horrific.
In ancient Greece, religion was inseparable from rites, processions, and sacrifices. This was no different in Epidaurus, and visitors to Asclepios' sanctuary needed to prepare themselves accordingly. Pilgrims cleaned themselves in order to be pure, then offered Asclepios food like honey cakes, cheesecakes, baked meats, and figs. The food was placed on the sanctuary's holy table, where it was presumably later taken by priests. After the preliminary offerings, visitors were allowed to enter the abaton, where they would hopefully encounter Asclepios in a dream. Medical steles also mention that healed patients sometimes gave additional offerings to Asclepios as thanks for being cured.
The poet Pindar's ode to the Aeron of Syracuse features a section dedicated to the birth of Asclepios. Then Apollo spoke, "I can no longer endure in my soul to destroy my own child by a most pitiful death, together with his mother's grievous suffering." So he spoke. In one step he reached the child and snatched it from the corpse. The burning fire divided its blaze for him, and he bore the child away and gave him to the Magnesian centaur to teach him to heal many painful diseases for men, and those who came to him afflicted with congenital sores, or with their limbs wounded by grey bronze, or by a far-hurled stone, or with their bodies wasting away from the summer's fire or winter's cold. He released and delivered all of them from their different pains, tending some of them with gentle incantations, others with soothing potions, or by wrapping remedies all around their limbs, and others he set right with surgery. Wait, what was the date on that?
In the pilgrim after the medical steles.
Oops. End of the 4th century, Hellenistic Greece.
Asclepios was originally born a mortal, and was the product of an affair between the god Apollo and a mortal, Coronis. Apollo killed Coronis after discovering she had been unfaithful, and ordered her body burned on a funeral pyre. However, he rescued his unborn child from Coronis' womb before the fire consumed her body. Apollo gave the baby to the centaur Chiron, who raised Asclepios and taught him to practice medicine. Over time, Asclepius became so skilled in the art of healing, he could even raise the dead. This angered Zeus, who sent Asclepius to Hades with a thunderbolt. Apollo retaliated by killing the Cyclopes, responsible for making Zeus's thunderbolts. Then, Zeus revived Asclepius, making him immortal and deifying him in the process. In sculptures, pottery, mosaics, and coins, Asclepius was portrayed holding a staff intertwined with a sacred snake. The staff is a symbol of medicine that still endures to this day.
Oh, that looked like smoke, doesn't it? The trees. Thought it was on fire or something. Inside and outside the temple, devotees honoured Asclepius with votive offerings such as coins, medical tools, bandages, relief statues and statuettes. However, they also gave body part votives. These anatomical ex votos offerings represented part of the pilgrim's body affected by illness. They were offered either during the initial prayer for health or at the end as thanks for being healed. One example of such an offering comes from an ancient medical stele. According to the inscription, Pandorus arrived at the temple with marks on his forehead. While sleeping, a vision of Asclepius visited him, tied a bandage around his head, and told him to remove it upon leaving the abaton. When Pandorus woke, he did as the god instructed. To his surprise, the marks on his forehead had been transferred to the bandage. As thanks, Pandorus dedicated the bandage to the temple, where it was presumably returned to its divine owner.
The Epitodion was the priest's residence. As the link between patients and the gods, priests were essential to the operation of the sanctuary. They were often elected into the priesthood for one-year periods, but could also buy themselves a position if they were wealthy enough. In addition to interpreting patients' dreams in the abaton, priests both supervised and performed sacrifices and rituals. During these functions, they were usually clad in white.
Asclepius and his family weren't the only staff at the sanctuary, as professional physicians worked there as well. After the priests interpreted the patient's dream, the surgery prescribed by the god, as well as the preparation of pharmacological drugs, was carried out by medical staff before becoming a traveling doctor. The famous physician Hippocrates allegedly did a residency at a sanctuary in his hometown of Kos. His acceptance onto the staff was likely due to his being an Asclepiad, a member of an aristocratic family that claimed to be descendant from Asclepius. Doctor bleeding the arm of a patient.
The abaton was built in the northern boundary of the sanctuary, where it surrounded a sacred well whose water was believed to have therapeutic properties. The abaton was where pilgrims went for incubation, or dream rituals. Details of the incubation ritual have been described in unearthed medical steles. They were also noted in Aristophanes' play Plutus, which featured a more comedic view of the process.
There were many methods for curing the sick in the sanctuary. In addition to being miraculously healed by Asclepius in the abaton, pilgrims could also be given pharmaceuticals antiseptical drugs and remedies. They could also undergo surgical procedures, as evidenced by the scalpels, lances, and other tools discovered in archaeological excavations. The variety of treatments is not surprising. Asclepius was recovered for being an experienced and versatile healer, and one of Pindar's odes describes him as such. Now all who come to him afflicted with natural sores, or with limbs wounded by grey bronze or far-flung stone, or with bodies racked by summer fever or winter chill, he relieved of their various ills and restored them. Some he tended with calming incantations, while others drank soothing potions, or he applied remedies to all parts of their bodies. Still others he raised up with surgery. Roman copy.
Incubation was the dream ritual pilgrims experienced in the Abaton. After completing the necessary preliminary rituals, pilgrims were allowed to enter the sacred building, where they lay prone. As they took in the smell of burning incense, the sanctuary's priests extinguished the oil lamps and asked them to sleep in silence. Once they were asleep, Asclepius would appear in their dreams and give his medical advice. The advice included diet and treatment recommendations, as well as requests for specific offerings or religious rituals. Upon waking up, priests interpreted the patient's dreams, unless a patient had been miraculously healed in their sleep. However, if a patient was completely beyond help, they were removed from the Abaton. This was to adhere to a ritual law that stated that no one could die or be born within the building.
The incubation ritual was also used elsewhere in the Greek world, including Oropos. However, instead of healing advice, pilgrims incubated at Oropos to receive prophecies from the hero Amphiaraos. Inspections and votive steles from the 4th century BCE indicate that while Amphiaraos did occasionally perform surgery in the patient's dreams, he was a prophet first and a healer second.
I see you've completed the tour. I hope you enjoyed your time in the sanctuary. As you can see, gods and miracles were just as important to the healing process as medicine was. Now, what else would you like to do?
Ready for a quiz?
Excellent. Here is your first question. Which mythical creatures made Zeus's thunderbolts?
Fucking hell.
Gorgons were monsters who petrified men. Unfortunately, they did not make thunderbolts. Try again. Harpies were winged bird-like women. They did not make Zeus's thunderbolts. Keep trying. Sirens were more likely to shipwreck sailors than work for Zeus. Try another answer. Correct. Zeus's thunderbolts were crafted by Cyclops. On to the second question. What was the name of the building where incubation occurred? Yes, pilgrims entered the Abaddon to undergo a dream ritual in the hopes of curing their ailments. One final question for you. Who was Asclepius' father? Hippocrates was thought to be a descendant of Asclepius, not the god's father. Try a different answer. Aegea was related to Asclepius, but she was his daughter. Keep trying. Yes, Apollo was Asclepius' father, and his mother was a mortal named Coronis. You've proven you know the sanctuary inside and out. Well done.
No, I haven't.
Very well. Follow me.
What are we on now? The urban household. That's probably a good point to it's probably a good point to quit, right? Where are the options? How'd you go back to the main menu then? It's taking a while to start, isn't it? So what happens when you go back into the Discovery Tour? The Plague of Athens. Ah, so you appear right where you need to be. Right, well, we'll end there. That's a good point, I think, to end. Yep, we'll come back. We'll do the... We'll do the Discovery. We'll do that, like, in a different video, I think. So we'll have to find the ones that we've already done. Kesson. Kesson's a good game, isn't it? I remember I used to play that years ago. It takes a little while to learn though, doesn't it? Ah, anyway, we'll end there. This was fun. My name's Waldowski, and thank you to every single one of you who watched, and I may see you tomorrow. Cut. Oh my god. Oh my god. Shame on you, sweet Nereva. How can you kill a god? Good night.